I call him Deputy Jack Chambers.
Well, Minister, I think the remarks made by my colleagues outline how shameful, inhumane that delivery was in terms of the two pieces you've given. Whilst you mentioned at the start that you weren't speaking personally, maybe you should speak personally. Maybe you should front up as the Minister for Disabilities and leave a positive legacy on these people's lives. Maybe you shouldn't have delivered that script, because what we saw from you was a continuity of the net defence, the brick wall, the reliance again on the deflection on the statute of limitations, and a real shameful defence of the lack of action by the state. You didn't take into account what I've said and what I set out around the quantification of damages by the failure of the state to remove the drug. And whilst you mentioned that the state has an ongoing commitment to these survivors, what actually you've outlined today is really worrying. It's an ongoing alliance between the State Claims Agency and a company with a very dark past. A company that sought to cover up documented evidence, a multi-billion euro company. And we have the State Claims Agency and your government, Minister for Health, mentioned in that court action, rocking in and using this statute of limitations to block the people here from pursuing their court action. And I have to say, a lot of what you've mentioned is just, whilst you've been trying to use the statute of limitations, you've superseded that with the next defence, which I know Deputy O'Ireachtas can vouch for, which we see at the Justice Committee, which is the old money message. But what you're bringing to a conclusion is what we specifically referenced in the bill, is the fact that we're not prejudicing a potential court action. So I reject your claim that you say that the bill will give rise to civil litigation that could not otherwise be prosecuted before the courts, resulting in the appropriation of public monies. I reject that. What we've been very clear about is giving someone a right of action. You're going right to the conclusion because you know damn well, beyond the brick wall, beyond this defence, the state is exposed. But what you're also doing, by allowing this defence to remain, you're allowing the brick wall to remain for that company, Grunenthal, a company who has failed to deliver for victims of thalidomide. And so it's not only genuine to say that the state, and you mentioned very little of the company in your two statements, but the state is actually providing a defence by opposing this bill for a company that has a very dark past, a past linked with Nazi Germany from the get-go. And as I've said, I didn't go into the detail of it, but it's one of the war secrets that's probably yet to be fully detailed and discussed in public. But I'm going to read out to you what Grunenthal sent doctors. It said, "Dear doctors, in pregnancy and during birth, the female organism is under great stress. Sleeplessness, unrest and tension are constant complaints. The prescription of a sedative and hypnotic that will hurt neither the mother nor the child is therefore often necessary." That was the cold spin that company sent Irish doctors. That was the spin that TP Wheelahan allowed to continue to roll around the Irish state for years after the withdrawal of the drug on an international basis. That was the line that allowed the drug to remain within Irish hospitals over an extensive period of time. And that is what you're defending. That's the legacy. A legacy that began post the birth of many of these children who had grave difficulties. A legacy where you failed to take account for the advice of the Attorney General at the time, and you didn't have the court's approval of the claims. And a legacy that resulted in the 1970s of not quantifying the damages. And again, you refer to the Minister, it's a matter for the Minister for Justice, and it isn't the Minister for Health. Again, cabinet deflection, cabinet spin. Have you heard the constitutional principle of collective cabinet responsibility? That's something you failed to recognise in your own address to us this evening. But I just want to go through some more of what she said. I welcome the support of Deputies O'Quailon, O'Reilly and Connolly, and all articulated the thread of difficulties that victims have had over a long period of time. And previous ministers and governments did fail victims. I'm not afraid to say that. But this is an opportunity to give victims support, to give them an opportunity to pursue their claims in a court. And I also think you've said that because of the huge importance of serving the public good, the Act grants extensions of time to limited cohorts who are described in the Act, and you put under a disability. Do you not see the physical consequences of people who've suffered as a result of thalidomide? To have the Minister for Disabilities questioning the inclusion of under a disability in quotation marks in your speech is quite insensitive, and perhaps you didn't write it, Minister, but to even put that on paper, to question their entitlement as people who have a definite difficulty and disability as a result of what happened in utero. For you to even question that as a minister, 50 years on, is a shameful legacy for you to leave in the Department of Health and Justice in which you're in. And you've said it would run against the principle of protecting the common good to grant extensions of time to a cohort which does not meet the criteria for being granted this extension. Again, another question on the granting of this under a disability. And again, it reinforces that alliance that appears to be happening between the State Claims Agency and Grunenthal before the High Court under case management. And that's why you've said that is why extensions of the limitation period apply in their cases, and you keep referencing that people under disability need to be greatly impaired in their ability to take proceedings. Do you know that some of the people who took the ex gratia payment are now dead? Do you realise that? That some of the people who were forced under the night of the long knives, as they call it, they died. They died in 2013 when they were offered that ex gratia payment. So the pressure bubble they were put under in that time is a demonstration of why some may have taken the ex gratia payment. But for many people, time is of the essence. And resolving the ongoing case management is extremely important to them. And I have to say, the language in your speech is terribly inhumane. And it shows that the state hasn't learned anything over 50 years. Other examples of what could be to come were referenced. But what we have is the permanent government trying to defend the past permanent governments. And that is the reality. It doesn't only rock the political system, this rocks the departmental system we have, the Whitehall model we have. It's a case of defend, 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 regardless of the consequences. But you're behind that. You're the minister who could help these people. I'm confident, Minister, that we will get this bill passed. I dispute it won't be a matter for you or for government. It will be an independent assessment of whether this does require a money message. But it goes back to your net defence when relying upon the money message. It shows a complete inhumanity when dealing with people. And as I've said, tragically, despite your spin about the HSE, the effect of the non-provision of essential services and equipment, including aids and appliances, has resulted, in fact, in the exacerbation and deterioration in terms of the physical well-being of many victims. What you gave was beautiful spin about all the supports and wraparound services that these people have. Well, have you spoken to anybody who is a victim of thalidomide? And have they told you that they have the perfect system you outlined in your speech? Because the opposite is of the case. Any independent assessment of the state's delivery of the healthcare package of the 70s shows a shameful lack of delivery that's continuing to this day. And that's why there's ongoing court actions. The Irish State Minister now has the opportunity to do the right thing by this cohort of its most vulnerable citizens. And to date and today, you've procrastinated, stood on ceremony, relied upon technicalities, and you've promoted falsehoods, false facts and ongoing spin in your speech today. And you shouldn't be trying to allow a company such as Grunenthal gain unfair advantage in relation to the situation of thalidomide survivors. That's why you should reverse the decision, back this bill and allow it to go through the Oireachtas so the limited number can finally have their say and that justice can prevail. Thank you.
That concludes